Anaheim 2026 wasn't just a good night for KTM, it was a statement. Eli Tomac won in his first Supercross race on Orange. Jorge Prado podiumed in just his second career Supercross start. The broadcast sold it as a hot start, maybe new bike energy. But what we watched was the visible result of a strategy KTM has been building for years. Tomac's win mattered because of how it happened. Controlled, decisive, no desperation. He won his heat, grabbed second off the restart behind Prado, made the pass, and never looked back. That's what a rider does when they trust the bike under them. Prado's podium mattered even more because it came in his second career Supercross start after a 2025 season with Kawasaki that ended at Anaheim with a shoulder injury. For a rider who spent 1 year struggling to adapt to the KX, looking this comfortable this fast on the KTM tells you everything about how rider bike sync compounds over time. The real advantage isn't the riders, it's the bike philosophy underneath them. KTM runs a double cradle crumbly steel frame when most of the field is on aluminum. Steel sounds outdated until you understand what it does in Supercross conditions. It flexes predictably. It absorbs sharp hits without spiking feedback through the bars. It gives riders consistent feel lap after lap, even when the track deteriorates and ruts stack on top of each other. Supercross is about balance, repeatability, and feel. A rider needs to trust the bike will respond identically on lap 1 and lap 15, even after casing a triple or getting shuffled through a blown-out berm. That's where KTM's steel frame becomes a strategic weapon. Aluminum frames are lighter and can be tuned stiffer, but they don't absorb inconsistency the same way. When a Supercross track evolves, ruts deepen, bumps square off, berms get chewed out. A bike that maintains feel becomes more valuable than a bike that was perfect in practice. KTM's frame philosophy is about adapting without forcing the rider to rebuild their mental model every time the dirt shifts. The frame features calculated longitudinal and torsional flex parameters, meaning it acts as a shock absorber itself, reducing harshness and rider fatigue. That's why KTM riders look smooth when everyone else starts looking choppy. If you like this kind of breakdown, subscribe. This is exactly what we do here. The suspension package reinforces this philosophy. KTM's 48mm air fork has been controversial, but in Supercross it makes tactical sense. Air forks are lighter, which helps with flickability in rhythm sections and quick direction changes in tight 180s. They're infinitely tunable without tearing down the forks. Air pressure adjustments change spring rate, meaning a rider can dial feel between practice and the main event without pulling the front end apart. That matters when track conditions shift fast or when a rider needs to compensate for setup changes elsewhere on the bike. The trade-off is that air forks can feel harsher on square edge hits compared to coil, but KTM's frame flex compensates. The bike works as a system, not a collection of parts. WP's linkage-style rear shock is built for traction management, which is everything in Supercross. The linkage ratio is progressive. It ramps up resistance as the shock compresses deeper. That gives riders plush initial stroke for small bumps and whoops. In practical terms, the rear end stays active through choppy sections, keeping the tire planted without blowing through travel and spiking the rider forward when they land a quad or double-double. Traction equals drive, and drive equals lap time. KTM's rear suspension is chasing repeatability and forward bite. Now layer Tomac and Prado's riding styles onto that platform. Prado rides with precision, smooth inputs, minimal corrections, carrying momentum through corners instead of muscling the bike around. His throttle control is deliberate, his body position is neutral, and he doesn't waste energy fighting the machine. That style gives KTM clean data. How the bike behaves when it's ridden perfectly, where the limits are, what suspension settings work when the rider isn't compensating for mistakes. Prado's feedback loop is high resolution because his riding is low noise. He won 2 MXGP World Championships on KTM machinery before his 2025 Kawasaki stint, so he knows the orange platform intimately. Tomac is the opposite kind of valuable. He's instinctive, reactive, and willing to throw the bike into situations most riders wouldn't attempt. He'll clutch up a double when the rut disappears, adjust his line mid-air if the landing looks sketchy, and block pass into berms at angles that shouldn't work. That gives KTM chaos data. Tomac's feedback is about resilience and not perfection. He tells KTM what the bike can survive. With 450 MX championships and 450 SX titles, plus 53 career Premier Class Supercross wins, Tomac's racecraft is proven. His cable clutch preference, a unique spec on his factory edition, shows KTM's willingness to adapt the platform to rider needs without abandoning core philosophy. Together, they bracket the performance envelope. KTM's engineers get to see what the bike does at both ends of the spectrum: precision and aggression, control and chaos. That's a setup advantage no single rider team can match. When KTM makes a suspension change or tweaks an engine map, they're testing it against two completely different riding archetypes. If a change works for both Prado and Tomac, it's bulletproof. If it only works for one, they know exactly where the trade-off is. Add Aaron Plessinger, a fifth-year KTM rider with a 2025 Supercross win and 5 podiums, and you have 3 data streams feeding the same engineering loop. The organizational philosophy backing this is just as critical. KTM doesn't panic. They don't redesign the bike every year chasing a bad season. They don't hire a rider and rebuild the program around them. They evolve slowly, refine deliberately, and let riders adapt to the platform instead of forcing the platform to adapt to riders. The current generation 450 SXF platform launched in 2023 with a mid-generation frame update in 2025. For 2026, changes are minimal. New radiator cap, graphics, minor wiring updates. That stability is deliberate. Most teams react to results. Bad season means new frame, new suspension, new identity. KTM reacts to data. If the bike underperforms, they analyze why, make targeted changes, and give those changes time to prove out. That stability compounds over time. When a rider spends multiple seasons on the same basic chassis architecture, they stop thinking about the bike and start thinking about the track. Setup becomes instinctive. Feedback becomes precise. The rider-bike relationship deepens to the point where small adjustments make big differences because the baseline is so dialed. KTM's 2026 bike isn't radically different from their 2024 bike, it's refined. The steel frame is the same, the WP suspension architecture is the same, the engine character is the same. What's changed is how much KTM has learned about making that platform work indoors. Contrast that with teams that chase trends. Aluminum frame one year, revised geometry the next, new suspension partner after a bad outdoor season. Every reset costs continuity. KTM skipped that cycle. They committed to a philosophy, steel frame, WP suspension, rider-focused tuning, and stuck with it long enough to extract every advantage it offers. The engine strategy fits the same pattern. KTM's 450 SXF platform prioritizes usable power over peak horsepower, which in Supercross means bottom-end torque and throttle response. The SOHC engine makes power early in the rev range, helping riders drive out of tight corners and maintain momentum through rhythm sections without constantly shifting. The throttle response is crisp, but not violent. It reacts immediately to input without spiking the front end or spinning the rear tire. That's critical when a rider needs to adjust mid-rhythm or recover from a mistake. A bike that responds predictably to throttle lets the rider stay smooth under pressure. KTM's fuel injection mapping prioritizes consistent delivery across varying track conditions, altitude, temperature, humidity, so the bike feels the same whether it's Anaheim or Denver. 2 engine maps are standard. Map 1 provides linear power delivery, Map 2 punches aggressive with explosive response, traction control, launch control, and quick shift come standard, giving riders electronic tools to manage power delivery without clutch work. That stability matters more than 2 extra horsepower because Supercross is won on execution, not peak numbers. A rider who trusts the throttle will pin it earlier, brake later, and commit harder than a rider guessing how the bike will respond. The entire system, bike philosophy, rider pairing, organizational patience, has been building since KTM prioritized Supercross as a development focus. They didn't split resources across multiple series. They optimized everything around 17 Saturday nights. The 2026 season isn't the start of KTM's Supercross push. It's the tipping point where years of refinement become obvious to everyone else. The platform is mature, 4th generation, 2nd year of the updated frame. The riders are settled. Tomac's a Supercross veteran, Prado's back on familiar machinery, Plessinger's in year 5. The engineering team has data stacked so deep they can predict how setup setup changes will perform before testing them. Prado's post-race comment says it all. With just the little experience I have in Supercross, this feels amazing. That's what happens when a rider returns to a platform they know intimately. Meanwhile, competitors are still reacting. Chase Sexton crashed in the main event. Hunter Lawrence battled Jason Anderson for fourth. Cooper Webb, the defending champion, got caught up with Plessinger in his heat and finished seventh in the main. New riders, new bikes, new strategies chasing what worked last year. KTM stopped chasing. They built a system, let it mature, and now they're harvesting the advantage. Anaheim won was the moment KTM's strategy became visible. Tomac won because he's racing a bike built for his instinctive Supercross style. Prado podiumed because he returned to a platform he won world championships on. The bike responded because it's been refined specifically for indoor conditions, not compromised to work outdoors too. KTM isn't winning because everything went right. They're winning because nothing they're doing looks accidental. And in Supercross, systems beat chaos every time. Everything you just saw starts with one decision. KTM never changed. If you want the full story, watch my breakdown on KTM's steel frame. That video connects all the dots.